Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Philip McMillan, and I'm here to bring, as usual, fascinating conversations and interviews. And today is a follow up with Dr. Chetty. I regularly talk to Dr. Chetty, he has such great insights. And I'm pulling together Dr. Chetty with Lisa Miron, who is a lawyer from Canada, who was one of the first people I heard explaining about the liability to doctors from European Court of Justice. And she has done a fascinating book, World on Mute, that she's launching in theory for the first time on this presentation. So look out for it. She'll explain some of the principles. So we'll be diving into some of the stuff that you may never have heard before. This is pretty heavy stuff, and it has real relevance to the practice of medicine and the way how medicine will operate in the future, especially when we take into things like artificial intelligence. Before I start, just a reminder that coming up in just a few weeks on the 31st of May is Hidden Drivers of Post-COVID Dysfunction, one of our conferences, the first conference for this year. And please look in the description to click on the link so that you are reminded. This should be a fascinating conference with experts from across the world. So without further ado, let's bring in our guests and we will ask them just quickly to introduce themselves. So, Lisa, I'll start with you. Just a quick introduction so people can know who you are, and then I'll get Shankara to do the same.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Dr. Philip, for inviting me. Hi, everybody. I'm a lawyer of 25 years. I represented the family of Nelia LaRosa, the first nurse who died of SARS in SARS-CoV-1, the first instance. I have a Bachelor of Science and a minor in chemistry, an LLB and an LLM. And I've been an activist since about 2022, 2023, when we had the trucker protest. And I started to research issues of civil liberty, essentially on a global level. And so, yeah, I'm happy to be here and for the first time publicly disclosing and talking about my new book, World on Mute.
Excellent, excellent. And Shankara, just in case somebody doesn't know who you are.
My name is Dr. Chetty. I'm a general practitioner in Port Edward, South Africa. I'm a frontline COVID doctor, still am. Was one at the start of the pandemic, tried to figure out the pathophysiology of what was going on, and got into a lot of trouble by exposing the true narrative of what's going on. So, yeah, glad to be here and be part of this discussion.
Wonderful. So, Lisa, let's get back to you here a minute. Can you give us just a brief summary with regards to what is it that you are writing on this book, World on Mute?
World on Mute takes what most people would think are innocuous bodies, the regulatory bodies, and links them globally to a global speech system. And I say it's far more dangerous than what people think. Every type of way to earn a living, I've noticed, has now been regulated, right? The smallest type of whether or not you sell a certain widget, that might be regulated now. And all of these regulated professions or occupations are getting speech committees. And the speech committees are silencing us on key areas. And what it ends up doing is side-checking us from our civil liberties and suspending us from our civil liberties. And because it's doing the same type of speech and the same type of speech committees fully and globally, what it's doing is creating a global architecture of speech censorship. And I say it's not innocuous because we're going to be discussing strictly the medical area, but my book covers 4 distinct areas, and one of them is legal. And just imagine, I have established that once you check the lawyers out who are pro-nation state or who represent COVID people or other areas of censored global speech, that pleading speech that goes before the courts, you would think, well, that has to be protected. And what we're finding is that's also not protected. And once you check out all the lawyers willing to bring the cases then you are not having that perfect constitution where administrative, legislative, and executive excess of power is checked by the courts. So we have a rogue power that's assembling. And my book looks at both the consequences of this, where it's going in the future, and that it's already a very big concern. And I say it eliminates our nation states. I say it has election interference. And in the medical context, there's very serious consequences that I will follow through in this discussion. And then I take people through the titans around the world, those in professions all around the world who are standing up against the system. And I want those titans to know that you are who made me see that this is a global system, because these bright lights are all around the world. And when you link them together, you see it's a one system, one beast system. We have one speech, and now we have this new regulatory power that I say is going to replace the courts and make them completely redundant and make us governed by social credit, by our right speech. And once we lose speech, we lose all else.
Wow, that
Oh,
is
and
powerful.
Dr. Chetty
Yeah.
Chetty, he is one of the titans that is featured and has his own chapter. So it's really an honor for me to be in this discussion and hear more about his case.
Wonderful. So that leads us right into it, Dr. Shankara. What is the situation now? And just a brief summary in case somebody doesn't know what's going on with regards to your case. Generally, what is it about, and where are things now?
Philip, I think some background. With treating COVID patients, I understood the pathophysiology and treated effectively, saw patients recover timeously. With that, I understood that spike protein was a problem. That made me look at the vaccines in a very poor light. In early 2021, I spoke out when I saw the mandates come to be that spike protein is a elaborately designed poison, and I saw an agenda, and I realized that there was some something behind it. They had a nefarious agenda behind it. There was intent. It was at a Caribbean conference that I in 10 minutes, summarized what I thought was going on. The case came up when a professor here in South Africa, who's conflicted, part of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID, in charge of the lockdowns, in charge of testing vaccine safety, brought a case against me to the Medical Council. So my case covers everything from the pathophysiology of COVID to the treatment, to the public health interventions, to the narrative, and to the agenda, the intent behind the virus, and of course the vaccine. So it covers a wide diversity of things. It has been postponed many times. I think the powers that be don't want to hear the truth about what's actually happened. And it's now scheduled for the 23rd to the 27th of June. It is a public case, and it should be live streamed globally, so everyone will have privy to it.
Wow. So yeah, so this is quite relevant. And just to give people context, is that what Dr. Chetty did, and I think there are a few people across the world who have done similar kinds of things, but Dr. Chetty is one of those who did it at national level in India, not in Meghalaya, where his system of combining high-dose steroids timeously with antihistamines literally saved every life that came across him with COVID. Now, for me, a lot of people go, I don't believe it. I can't, a lot of, if you mention it, they go, I don't believe that. That's not possible. So I go, okay, well, you do realize that he's been speaking about this for a long time. And if this wasn't happening, the people in his locality would tell us. So if it isn't happening, or aren't you even curious as to what he did and why he did it? That's when you know people are stuck in an ideological narrative, where when the outcome that we should all want occurs, but is discounted because it didn't come either from the source that you accept or in the way that you want to accept it. And that's where we are at the moment. The world is locked into this narrative. So, Lisa, when you hear that case and you think about it objectively, they're not even interested that he saved the lives. They're just focused on the fact that he said something negative about the vaccine. What, from a legal point of view, does that trigger in your mind, or from the book that you're putting together?
Right. So thank you. That's a great question. What we have here, it's not the topic itself that's barred, right? It's not. You can talk about COVID. You can talk about the vaccine. It's not the topic itself that's barred. It's what you're going to say about it. It's what side that you're going to say about it, right? And we've never criminalized speech to this extent before. Now, essentially, we are doing that. We are creating a system where everybody who's a medical professional who follows Dr. Chetty is going to say to himself, well, I'm not going to speak, right? I'm because we are creating a social and apartheid and economic, because it's punitive economically. Because if you can't earn your living, right, then you're going to have to be quiet. So when I look at this, is a complete violation of the right to free speech. It's an utter right. It's an utter violation of the right to free speech. And so you have these new speech committees, these anointed committees within regulatory body who are basically truth stampers, because they're not going to have an actual hearing on the merits with the experts to decide the merits of the speech. No, they have already unilaterally decided the speech that is bad. The speech that is bad. Why? So no, it's not a legal system to unilaterally create, the Ministry of Truth on what is, and I cover a variety of topics where they've decided what is the Ministry of Truth, but this is a very, very important one in the medical field. And so they've decided his speech, or any number of speeches that are similar to his that are covered in the book, are wrong speak. And, therefore they cannot be out there, and you lose your license for it. So I say it's a lot more like, in creating these speech committees, we've created communism without deciding that we're going to get rid of our Constitution. We've decided that we're going to have communists, agree with your party, and you get the right to earn a living. And people who might agree, I'll say to you, the people that agree with the COVID narrative opposite to Dr. Chetty or any of the other nurses and doctors that I review in this book, I say to you, look at the system of power that you are allowing to be erected under your watch. We go from a rights-based existence to an access-based existence, and we create discretionary powers that we have no right to claw back on what speech is permitted in our world that can be abused. And here's a universal law across all history. Governments are either run on the basis of force and violence, or they're run on the basis of dialogue. What we have here is the elimination of speech rights. That does not bode well. It lumps the type of government into the one that we should fear. Now,
I just want to pause you there a minute, because Shankara, when you reflect on this, because you must have had many conversations with doctors, even in South Africa, in the background, what is it that they are feeling, and what is it that they are learning from this situation? Because nobody wants to go through this kind of thing. For what? Why would they want to do that?
I think, Philip, there's two types out there. There's one that we're critical of the narrative from the start, but we're afraid to speak out. They remain still through the pandemic. But they're the ones that right now are speaking out and hoping that we'll change the system. There are other doctors that were coerced into believing the narrative and forced patients to vaccinate, went down that road. They have now, a lot of them, realized their mistake. But then we're sitting with a group of doctors who are despondent about the medical fraternity and the regulatory authorities, in that they realize their hands are tied and they've been led into an abyss making mistakes that were provoked by wrongful information. And so they feel violated in their own right. So yeah, the medical fraternity is quite fractured. We have some that are silenced because of the violation to their scientific ability, and you've got the others who are very angry and looking for ways to change it because they realize the extent of what has happened and their inability to actually change things. At the end of the day, Philip, it's the patient that matters. And whatever regulations come out, it should be in favor of patients. And if we're going to take away doctors who are basically the sounding boards of patients' problems, we got no chance of setting up a public health system if we can't set up a personal health system and actually listen to what each individual patient has to say. So, yeah, if we go down the road and get into an AI based system, we're just moving further away from what patient requirements actually are.
And one of the things that I find interesting, I like history. And so I was recently looking back at what happened with thalidomide and reflecting carefully about what was the position of clinicians after thalidomide. And there was a different number of different categories. Some people were very supportive of the doctor, the German pediatrician, who came out and stood up against that narrative and said, no, this is the cause. And they go, wow, this is great. Those are the people who support you, Shankara. Then there was another big group who just didn't say anything. They didn't support, they didn't apologize, they didn't do anything. And then you had a third group who refused to accept the science. And they went on to discount what was said. So they, from their point of view, they didn't do anything wrong. That was what the science had said. They're not too sure about what they had found with regards to thalidomide, and they held their position. They held on to their narrative, even when all the evidence pointed to it. I suspect we are in a very similar situation in the world where no matter what happens, there are some people who will refuse to change that perspective and who don't see the danger that is coming. So, in terms of the health thing, Lisa, I want you to explain to us what is the relevant thing coming from an artificial intelligence point of view? And what would you be saying to doctors now that should make them sit up and listen?
Thank you. That's a great question, Dr. Phillips. So I'm just going to touch that thalidomide question. That silencing that you had with thalidomide or with smoking or with opioids was without the system that I describe in my book, which is these speech committees that are linked, right? That we're all afraid of, that can, take a person out and eliminate their ability to practice. And because you're regulated, that's it. You have this skill set, you have this knowledge, you have this ability. You can't do anything. They've really denuded your ability to participate in society. So that's a very frightening system. And so now when we have that system in place, that means for every scientific inquiry, for actually every inquiry that's relevant to man. And what I discovered was that there is a directionality. So this is a globalist system. And so nations need to, nations, people who are pro-nation state, they have to look at this as an attack on the national identity and the ability of the nation to have constitution or bill of rights or rights-based systems, or if you're a Republican or in a republic like the US, all of those are under attack in this system. Right? So I say to the doctors, right, if you love your country, this is relevant. But now let's get into the directionality of where we were going. I found that where we're going is to an AI governance system. And these laws are set up and described in the book. And what they have been doing, and for at least a decade now, is mapping out every country and creating the ability to have interoperability, semantic interoperability, legal interoperability for the collection of this data to be able to have health by AI. And when I went through the system, what I discovered was face-to-face healthcare was a last resort. And it was even discretionary. You didn't access it. So what it did not describe was a patient-doctor relationship. So we have we're going to be governed by AI to a certain extent, but we're going to get healthcare by AI. Oh, the money we save, right? Oh, so these doctors now, their silence is the silence that will echo across generations for the entire profession. AI healthcare has AI administering your symptoms and deciding your, would you get a vaccine, your treatment. And, we have simultaneously, and I know this is dark, but we have simultaneously the rise of euthanasia. UK is now, was it today or yesterday that they were going to debate the bill? Right. And in Canada, we have euthanasia. It's now 7% of deaths and rising. We have a situation where we're letting people sit on waiting lists to access, social health care, but they're offered immediately euthanasia. I have a personal anecdote of a friend's mother going in for back pain, having a lovely life, not suicidal. And she came out with a euthanasia appointment. So we have right now these massive attacks on our healthcare system. And I don't think they're coincidental. So I put it together in the book in a way that people could understand.
I think that this is actually quite scary, Shankara. And when I think about it, because I'm one of the people who expects AI to come on board very strongly. And I keep on warning clinicians. I say to them, listen, what has happened in the pandemic has caused so much distrust across the population that I think they will be open to this. Maybe 10 years ago, if this had come up, similar to what would happen with pilots, AI could fly a plane, but nobody would feel comfortable without a pilot on the plane. Okay. We already have that. And so in a similar way, if we were having plane crashes all the time with pilots, people would go, well, what the heck? We may as well use AI to fly the plane. So in the same way that doctors have abdicated their position of advocacy, because that's fundamentally what has happened in the pandemic, they have taken the advice of experts, regulators, and abdicated their position in terms of saying, I want to make sure this is in the best interest of my patients. Because they're not doing that, they have opened wide the door for an AI type system. How does that play out, Shankara, in terms of what we would see happening?
Philip, I think it was intentional to break the medical fraternity. It held a lot of power. The pharmaceutical industry wanted it for themselves. And of course, we had a lot of critical thinkers speaking out against it. This is not something that started with COVID. It's been going on for the past 40 odd years with the rise in the pharmaceutical industry and new development. And so they push the new developments that come out. In breaking the medical fraternity, Philip, it leaves the door wide open for other actors to take an interest in what they call deem health. And of course, the patient doctor relationship gets desecrated in that. I think healthcare is going to move into a different realm. Yes, AI will come in. We cannot avoid that. So AI will be governed. I guess AI is what you feed it. So we'll have different systems in place, but the ones run by governments will have an agenda to them. But of course, doctors won't become obsolete because there'll be patients out there looking for proper care. Patients nowadays go to doctors and don't get the right diagnosis. So I can't expect AI with its broad, generalized approach to healthcare to find actually the diagnosis for patients. So I guess patients are going to find after 2 or 3 times with AI, they're not getting there. And so doctors will have relevance, but it's those doctors who are able to critically think and not follow the rules that will be able to solve problems. Those that follow all the protocols, well, their job can be done by AI. And so they're going to have to step up and get some critical thought between those ears.
Yeah, so this is the challenge. You're quite right, Shankar. I emphasize that based on the speed that this is coming with regards to AI, is that if you follow protocols and if that's all you do, yes, you will become obsolete. If you can't dissect and create, understand in a way that AI can't do, then yes, AI will replace you. That is really where it's at the moment. But it seems as though the nail in the coffin that is going to come for clinical people, Lisa, is the angle that came out of the European Court of Directive, where the damage that now seems as though it's inevitably going to have to be acknowledged is going to be lumped on the doctors.
Well, that's another weapon used against the doctors. But let's get back to the concept that Dr. Chetty is talking about, is that, we have a splinter group of doctors that don't fit into the fraternity. Because the fraternity will not, if the fraternity is controlled by those who are putting forth the AI healthcare, they're not going to permit doctors to be rogue. They're going to use the system that they're creating right now, which are the speech systems, right? So I argue that we need decentralized medicine rather than centralized medicine. But, I argue too that we need decentralized everything, because it's the centralization, the idea that the world can be an operating system, that we can just be data and widgets within that operating system to be manipulated, right? And so when I looked at this AI, you're not sick, Philip, you're not sick. You have just different data. You're not dead. You have different data, right? It's very dehumanizing to be reduced to your data. And if the system decides that, it's your vaccine time, or, it's your euthanasia appointment, we have no idea who puts in the regulations, who decides what those regulations would be. I say this is an all hands on deck moment in healthcare. And I think anybody who's interested in this and towing the line should read the book and see where the directionality is going with respect to doctors' speech. And within that, before we go to that legal aspect, is they describe freedoms within this TEDS as freedom of movement of goods, of labor, of capital, and of data. What's not there is freedom of speech. Once we lose speech, how do we articulate any of the protections we might want for our society, let alone medicine? The reason why I think the doctors and the lawyers and the professions with the most power and intellect should step up now is because this fraternity can once again be strong and oust. They need to oust these speech committees. I don't care if you like what I say, right? You might not like my version of it, but once we have the ability to dialogue once again, we can create the solutions we have to society. We feel like we are being led down a path and we can't get off it, and it's the only path. And the reason why is because we don't have the dialogue to dialogue those solutions. How many people would think like Dr. Chetty if he wasn't pursued? How many other people would be standing beside Dr. Chetty if he wasn't pursued? In fact, there is a silent majority, and it is a large majority, that no longer want the system, and the system itself must be defeated. If after that there's some AI healthcare, it has to be decentralized. But I would far much more trust a relationship with a doctor where I can confide in them and not have it fall through on an operating system, right? Than become a governed piece of data for AI to parse. And this is an all hands on deck moment.
Wow. What can you say, Shankara?
I think, Philip, there are solutions. We have to think outside the box again. I guess I've been one to always, throughout my life, challenge authority with truth. So I've always been in trouble. So I think the time has come again to challenge authority. And with the Integrative and Functional Medicine Association in Malaysia, where we've done a lot of work, I think healthcare being captured by allopathy, that's the first point that we need to change to bring all the different healers, not necessarily doctors, into a new fraternity so that we can provide healthcare to patients. But the problem we have global regulatory authorities that dictate what we can and can't do. These regulatory authorities were never elected, and they're not there for the patient itself. They tend to be coerced and by other financial interests. So, Philip, it's like being in a football game where the referee is being bribed by the other team and there's no way of winning that game. So why do you want to play that game? I think it's time we make a game of our own. So what we're planning with the Malaysian Integrative Medicine Association is to form a global private club. Now, where that comes from, Philip, when I look at the World Health Organization, they're a private club. And so they don't subscribe to public law. They have their own rules and regulations and they govern themselves. Same with the World Economic Forum, same with all these regulatory or global authorities. So we've decided to form a private club that has the same rules and regulations as the medical councils generally around the world, but alter those regulations to give doctors a broader scope to act interdisciplinary. Also, force patients to take more responsibility for the choices they have in an open environment where knowledge is free, where you can research, so you get true informed consent for everything that you do. We'll invite the best to be our peers. But the idea behind a private club, Philip, is that if anyone in the public wants to have a consultation with any member of our club, they will have to join the club. And we'll make it a very nominal fee so that you have to be a member of our club for us to treat you. So at the end of the day, I'll be treating a private club member, not a member of the public. And so public law doesn't apply to me. I can take it outside that game. So I think we need to think outside the box as to global structures, governance, and what they're trying to do. And us as people can come together and do it a different way. So we can turn the entire world into a private club and public law won't apply anymore. So yeah, there's ways to do this, and we need to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, when you hear that, that sounds pretty creative, Lisa. Now you are looking you're looking at it and you're seeing how the system is trying to position. How would they try and stop that? What would they try to do?
Well, currently, I'll give you the example of Bill 36. This is how I end the book. It's called Lawful Tyranny. And what they've done is they've codified it and they've given speech committees powers on an as needed basis that they get to define for themselves. So the speech committees then have powers that aren't listed, right? So where have we possibly seen that before? You have the ability to do search and seizures. You can have a warrant search or you can have a warrantless search. And in the event of an emergency, and the defined emergency is simply what's written on the paper. It doesn't have a definition section of what has to be an emergency. So if they write emergency on a piece of paper, they get these powers. The powers have long-arm jurisdiction, and they govern anybody who communicates with a regulated profession, or they get to govern anybody who has an occupation, or they get to govern anybody that they think it's in the public interest to do so. So then all the powers go up to one individual. In this case, it's Bonnie Henry. And it allows really for the ability, it says there, to administer a substance, if it's in, and they get to decide if that preventative medicine has undue harms. They get to decide. They define. It becomes then sort of a definition, right? They provide the informed consent for the entire population. Then I use the example of which jurisdiction is this? I'll just say it is, basically vaccine by cop. right? So you have the ability within these lawful tyranny legislations to do horrific things once they have another emergency. And I think that's what we have to really guard ourselves against, is once they have those emergency powers, you can be certain that the voices they want to silence, they've decided already. You can be certain, that the censorship provisions and powers that they give themselves within here, they will use against those they believe are most dangerous to their objectives. So that's why I wrote the book. Canada, of course, had Bill 63. Are either of you familiar with that? Um,
No.
no. So Bill 63, thank goodness for the Conservatives, they filibustered it and it didn't pass, but we have a very dangerous government in power once again. And it allowed for life imprisonment for speech that they define themselves as hateful. So it's, and I've looked into this, and hateful is basically against the government narrative. So it becomes hate speech to speak against a medical intervention because you're causing, quote, the loss of lives. So, you have almost like a kangaroo court, lawful tyranny, assembling within these regulatory bodies, and they are coming under these speech committees. All of this power that I describe is coming under these speech committees, and that's why I really do feel like it's all hands on deck moment, that we can't merely devise the alternatives, right, and run from it. I believe we have to square it now. We're at that stage where we really have to square the evil that's written. And when I first read Bill 36, I wept. I didn't just cry. I wept because I read what it is they wanted to do to humanity. And, we've already seen what's gone on in terms of repressions of freedoms and freedom of speech. And so I love that you're doing something else in terms of devising it. But I still say we must square what is the evil right now before us.
Wow, yeah, and I saw this in the comments, and so the people who are here at the moment, you can count yourself lucky. As somebody said, you're upsetting YouTube. They're kicking me off and sending me to other videos, and so this is even. I can sense that this conversation is a very powerful conversation. It's making people aware of some things that are occurring in the background, because what you are highlighting, Lisa, is the fact that there was so much coordination. When I think of Dr. Matthew Shelton in New Zealand, he was removed from his ability to practice. As we said, we know about the doctor in Malaysia. He won his case. There's Dr. Chetty in South Africa. There are doctors in the UK, doctors in Canada. Across the world, there seems to be this kind of coordination. And as Dr. Shelton had said, it needs to be exposed who these people are and what it is that they are actually doing. And so, Shankara, is this somewhat what you are hoping to try and achieve with regards to making your case public?
Yeah, Philip, that's exactly it. Look, the only hold that the council has on me is licensure. All they can do to me is take away my license to practice. Now, if I'm willing to relinquish that license, then they have no power. So when they brought the charge against me, I made it very clear that you can suspend me. It means nothing to me. Because if you suspend me for telling the truth, I'm not willing to be part of a fraternity that refuses to actually see the truth. So I think at the end of the day, Philip, my case is about bringing in the truth. From a medical perspective, Philip, my case proves that SARS-CoV, the variants, were biologic weapons that were manufactured deliberately over the past 20 years. And that has serious implications for the health and physiology of the entire planet. Because I clearly, Philip, we can see doctors confused with how patients are responding to COVID infections and all the different problems that we're seeing with vaccine injuries, and nobody seems to understand the physiology and pathophysiology behind it. So we're sitting with a massive problem, and someone needs to actually needs to fix that. Now, the world has gravitated towards the next pandemic and preparing for that next pandemic. We've got the World Health Organization pandemic treaty. We've got a lot of money invested in all these things. But the way I see it, it's a way to basically siphon money out of the tax system, and it's a way to curb our freedoms by declaring another pandemic. But if my case proves conclusively that the last pandemic was wholly man made and intentional, then I'd like to know who's going to create the next pandemic, and why are you taking away my freedom and not looking for the guy that's causing the next pandemic if it's man made? So we need to start to look at bioweapon prevention. So my case is about getting the world to acknowledge that we have bioweapon technology and it's already been unleashed onto the public.
Yeah, this is the legal implications of that. And I don't know if you've been following the case, Lisa, of what's his name, who was in charge of the Corona Committee,
Reiner,
German lawyer.
yeah, Reiner Filmick. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep,
And
right.
he's recently been awarded 3.5 years
Yeah.
prison, and they're only using 12 of his 15 months, something like that, of his pretrial detention. He's featured in the book. You see the increase of criminalization of speech within and without the system. So in Canada, as a lawyer, I'm reading the bills that get passed, and we have the bills that started watching us. Those are bills C11 and C18, and deciding what is a broadcast and what can, what they'll allow on YouTube and those types of things. And so how it works with AI is our countries are systematically deciding that we will be known online, right? We're going to be known online. And with the infrastructure of the smart city or the cognitive city, just put those elements in, those are going to be the subject of my next book. We become entirely encapsulated into an operating system. So it's the titans, in my book that I disclose, I don't even know if you know how simply important your roles are right now in pushing back on the system, because you are pushing back on the context of your COVID speech, and that helps on the bioweapons, and it's going to help people in humanity. But you're also pushing back on a system pressure that's being assembled legally, globally, worldwide, and it's being assembled with financial systems and with social credit that's been perfected in the CCP. And what I also see is, I'm sort of a big person thinker. When I, see a lot, I'm dyslexic, and when I see things, they light up in my brain in a different way, and they join together. And I'm seeing the financial system, I'm seeing the legal system, I'm seeing the medical system, I'm seeing the education system, and it's all linked through these speech committees. So people think they're just, oh, well, I'm going to do my DEI courses and I'm going to write my check, and I don't have to look at them for another year. And within that system, a massive power is assembling to do the governance through this AI. They will become the social credit system court. And it is very important, Dr. Chetty, that you are standing up, because it is truth that is not being allowed to be spoken. And you are clearly speaking with people who have like-minded ideas with you, and you've come up already with a solution system. And you see what happens when we're allowed to dialogue with one another, when we're allowed to have conversations. Most people right now, They have no hope. And I think that's explained too in the book under the section Mind War. But they have no hope because they haven't heard discussions that can take us to the alternative. So they want to corner all speech so that everything is either neutral, silent, or positive towards the directionality that they wish to take us. And so I say now is the time where the cacophony of speech, where endless words have to come. And I'll tell you, I conclude the book with a poem I wrote in 1999, and this is why I know I'm going to win, why we're going to win, while humanity is going to win. I wrote, "There's no cure, no vaccine for words. Before I understood that meaning in letters, I think I was sane, but now I am framed, boxed in by the words, by the ones you said, by the ones I couldn't. Never as dead as that one meaningless sing-a-song, ordering an A, B, C, better to forever, hum a tune, play the violin, not with fire, spell one letter at a time, spell fire. There's no cure, no vaccine for words." And I think it goes on. That's all I can remember right now. But when you think about it, here bubbling decades before today, I realized there's no cure for words. There's no vaccine. They can't inoculate us. They can't take all our words from us. And here I wrote a poem about, now we're talking about a mass vaccination with a bioweapon at the same time that we're setting up a system of power for silence, right? And yet I wrote a poem. It's almost, the book is my long form of that poem.
Wow. It's fascinating stuff, Lisa. I mean, wow. So yes, I think we should, let's tie this together as we come towards the end, Shankara. And I want to give Lisa the chance to promote her book, so I'll let her to finish off at the end. But these are serious times, and it requires a different approach and thinking from a medical point of view. What can you say to doctors if they happen to be listening?
I think, Philip, they need to acknowledge the signs. We all make mistakes. We need to fix them. So, for those that made mistakes and followed the wrong narrative, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said from the beginning, Philip, there's only two wooden boxes in that church, and it's a confessional or a coffin. Choose carefully. We are in a spiritual war. So, at the end of the day, I think there's hope for humanity. Patients need to rise as well. I think they realized what's happened to them. So at the end of the day, Philip, if all this takes place, it is the man on the street that's going to suffer. So at the end of the day, whatever your vocation, we all need to rise in unison to protect our free speech. At the end of the day, it was by the people for the people. And it's no more by the people. So when we look at healthcare as well, we're just ignoring what people have to say. So people should dictate what public health should be. I mean, we're looking at spending billions on a vaccine when half the planet doesn't have clean water. What do we do? Is this the definition of health? So everything, like Lisa has been saying, is about wordage. And so pandemic doesn't mean the same thing. Vaccine doesn't mean the same thing. Health doesn't mean the same thing. Everything's been co-opted and corrupted. And so everyone's confused about the meaning of words. So I think it's important that we go back to self-governance, sovereignty, and make sure that governance takes place from the ground up. These big global powers, that top-down kind of governance hasn't worked. And here in South Africa, I'm not sure if you've heard of the case of Orania. It's a piece of land that was bought in South Africa and is self-governed. They have their own water supply and the rest. It's caused a major problem here in our country because government can't do anything about them. But I think that's what's going to have to happen. We're going to have to start with communities, building community, building culture, and take it from there. What you see around you, Philip, was actually a test bed in South Africa in '94 when we got our freedom. Instead of uplifting the black community was left to migrate into other communities. That diluted all the other communities, and now none of the communities have a sense of community. It's every man for himself. Now we see that with the open border policies in Europe, dilution of culture, dilution of community. And once you dilute culture and community and sovereignty of a nation, it's every man for himself. And so, every man needs to come together and reform community. That's going to take place at a grassroots level.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shankar. And Lisa, your final thoughts and your raise awareness of your launch of your book.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me, Dr. Philip and Dr. Chetty, to discuss my book today with you and bring it into the context of Dr. Chetty's case. I would hope that when you have a return in June, that it is filled with the fraternity, that it is filled with doctors who were silent, that if they want to remain silent, they stay there and stand beside you in their silence. And I hope the courtroom is filled with people who want to push back on this system, and so that it becomes so large that it cannot be contained any longer. The book is World on Mute. It covers 4 sections, 4 domains. It intersperses the background and the legal matters and all the documents that I found with who are the Titans, who they are, what they face in their domains. And I cover first medical, then legal and political and constitutional. Then I go to woke ideology and gender ideology. And I finish with the emergency powers. And I showcase that this is one system. We may be separated by many, many, many distances, but this is one system devised, the same speech, the same side of speech each time. And all of it hides a pillar of the globalist state. It's a global system that silences speech on a global level, and it's to transform our society from a rights-based to an access-based. And we have to say no. And I really hope people purchase my book and learn something and get into the game.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you both very much. Thank you for all the people who are listening with us. Just remember that coming up in just just under 2 weeks is one of our first conferences for the year, Hidden Drivers of Post-COVID Dysfunction. We're gathering experts from across the world to discuss what is happening, why are so many people sick, what can we do about it? So again, thank you all for being with us. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Shankara and Lisa. If you would just wait with me until after the outro. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you.